West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Tonight on the Readout.
I have to say that statement that we saw from the Secret Service, that basically there were messages lost, but none of them pertain to what we're investigating. I don't know how, if they're lost, you can draw that conclusion with such confidence. So something doesn't seem quite right.
In a nod to the erased Watergate tape, Secret Service text messages from January 6th and the day before are gone for good. We begin tonight with what those in charge of protecting the president might be protecting themselves, with growing questions over deleted text messages from agents on the day of the insurrection. As the January 6th committee collects additional evidence ahead of Thursday's primetime hearing, NBC News has learned that the Secret Service says it has no new text messages related to the attack to hand over. The Washington Post first reported the development, knowing that any other texts that agents exchanged around the time of the attack on the Capitol were purged. In other words, potential real-time communications of agents in contact with the former president on that day are likely gone forever. The wiped messages were disclosed last week by the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General. And the Secret Service has denied that the text messages were deleted maliciously, but as part of a system reset, apparently lost in migration. Committee member Stephanie Murray described the Secret Service's actions to the great Nicole Wallace.
Their process, as explained to us, was simply to leave it to the agents to determine whether or not there was anything on their phones worth saving that was necessary to save for federal records. And as a result, today they did not receive any texts from their agents when they made that transition that was flagged for preservation.
Murphy said the Secret Service would continue to explore additional ways to secure the subpoenaed text messages. For its part, in a statement, the Secret Service spokesman says the agency continues to be fully cooperative with the January 6th Select Committee, noting that the agency delivered an initial set of documents and records in response to last week's subpoenas. That includes documents as well as Secret Service cell phone use and other policies, as well as operational and planning records. Today, the National Archives called on the Secret Service to investigate the potential unauthorized deletion of texts. The Secret Service has 30 days to explain what was deleted and how it was lost. A spokesman for the Secret Service said it will cooperate with that request. Now, all of this comes as the committee is preparing for more bombshell testimony in Thursday's primetime hearing. It will proceed as scheduled without committee chair Benny Thompson, who has tested positive with COVID. We wish him a speedy recovery. The hearing is expected to focus on Trump's 187 minutes of inaction during the attack on the Capitol and will feature new testimony from two former Trump administration officials, former Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Matthews and former Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Pottinger, who both resigned in the aftermath of the attack. In her deposition, Matthews recalled the effort to get the former president to make a statement.
We had all talked about at that point about how it was bad and the situation was getting out of hand. We thought that the president needed to tweet something immediately. We all got a notification, so we knew it was a tweet from the president, and we looked down and it was a tweet about Mike Pence. It was clear that it was escalating quickly. The situation was already bad, and so it felt like he was pouring gasoline on the fire by tweeting that.
Meanwhile, Matthew Pottinger said the former president's tweet at 2:24 p.m. on January 6th, attacking Vice President Mike Pence, was the turning point for him.
The tweet said something to the effect that Mike Pence, the vice president, didn't have the courage to do what should have been done. I read that tweet and made a decision at that moment to resign. That's where I knew that I was leaving that day.
Joining me now is Asawin Subasang, senior politics reporter for Rolling Stone, Charles Coleman Jr., a civil rights attorney and former prosecutor, and Juanita Tolliver, Democratic strategist and MSNBC political analyst. Thank you all for being here. I want to start with the Secret Service situation, Asawin, because it is just fishy to me. And there's a history here. One of my great producers pulled this piece from Carol Leonnig, and she's reporting about the history of the Secret Service of losing critical records. And here's what Carol Leonnig wrote. The Secret Service has had a history of important records disappearing under cover of night and agency staff members refusing to cooperate. When a congressional committee was investigating assassinations and assassination attempts, it sought boxes of records that reportedly showed the Secret Service received ample advanced warnings and threats before President John F. Kennedy's death that white supremacists and other organizations were plotting to kill Kennedy using high-powered rifles from tall buildings. The Secret Service told investigators that records had been destroyed, wait for it, as part of a normal culling of old archives, days after investigators had requested them. So, just as a journalist, do these denials of nothing being fishy, nothing to see here, how do those ring with you?
Well, the situation at the very least right now does not look good at all. But just to back it up for a moment, in terms of what Donald Trump, while he was president, demanded of his own Secret Service detail, here's what we know based on conversations with people who worked with him at the time during his administration. He personally, whether or not he got it on individual case-by-case basis, demanded virtually the same kind of fealty and loyalty that he would demand of a senior administration official, an attorney general, a White House lawyer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to him, what he was demanding of his Secret Service detail was not that much different from what he was demanding of other staff in the administration and in the West Wing. So there's that. Having said that, in terms of what these deleted texts means, there's more investigation and to be done, and a lot more answers to actually come to fruition. I don't want to jump the gun on anything, so to speak. But at the very least, on the record denials from a Secret Service spokesperson is not nearly enough right now in order to clear up all the questions remaining on this. The first question I have is, do they know if the purged messages were from agents on Pence's or Donald Trump's detail? That is an important unanswered question right now.
There's a lot of unanswered questions. I'm going to go to you on this, Charles, because it would be relevant that the people who were the most physically close, in the closest physical proximity to Donald Trump on the day of the insurrection, that would be his Secret Service detail. What were they saying to each other? What were they saying to other people like Tony Ornato, who very unusually went from being on Trump's detail to getting a job in the White House? That doesn't happen very often, to the point that Asawin was just making, that the closeness was so real that he elevated a Secret Service agent to that kind of a job. The ultra loyalty means that you don't know what they were saying, and they could have been saying something relevant. If, as a prosecutor looking at this, is there a way to reconstruct these things based on them handing over the phone records of who people were calling? Or is there any way to reconstruct, or are these records just gone?
Well, Joy, to reconstruct the actual text messages is going to be a Herculean task. I think that if you're talking about how to get in substance what those conversations were, you're exactly right. You would triangulate the cell phones, you would figure out who was where and with what proximity they were to one another, because more than likely, if they weren't having conversation via text, they were having conversations orally and verbally with one another. And then after that, in terms of your investigation, you would then look to talk to each and every one of those to see how their different versions of the accounts and the conversation sort of matched up. But there is an important point that I want to make very quickly. I've been in charge of trials. I've been in charge of investigations before. And one thing that I can say is that every case is about a story. And you have to be careful. In the course of any investigation, there are always going to be these sort of rabbit holes that are distractions to the actual main story. The challenge that the committee has going forward right now is how deep do they explore this rabbit hole in the moment as they are dealing with trying to get these hearings wrapped up, trying to get a report out, and trying to deal with the other considerations and moving parts that are going on. I am absolutely convinced that this angle needs to be explored, but the question is by whom and at what point, because you can't get away from the main story of what this is all about.
And that is the important point, Juanita. The job of this committee is to tell a coherent story in as a sort of limited amount of time, because people are only going to have so much attention span to keep following this. What do you make of the fact that they're going to go forward with this hearing? We are going to hear from these live witnesses in prime time, even despite the fact that the chairman now, because of COVID, cannot necessarily be a part of it. I mean, they've been doing a lot of stuff virtually. He might be able to be a part of it in some way.
Look, this is a robust team, so I'm sure they can operate with the chairman in the room or without him not there. And I think they're still going to paint a minute-by-minute portrayal of what was happening in the chaos of the White House. I think what Pottinger emphasized in the testimony you showed earlier was that we knew his cutoff moment. He packed his box as soon as that tweet about Pence came out. But before that, his other testimony showed that he was witnessing the chaos of around the Oval Office of why the National Guard hadn't been deployed, why there was no backup headed to the Capitol to quash this mob, which everyone in the White House at this point knew was armed, right? Like, I think the other thing that I'm looking forward to hearing from Sarah Matthews and the story she's going to tell is probably going to pick up where Cassidy Hutchinson left off with hearing conversations in real time. She, in previous testimony, said the dining room door was open and she could hear that Trump was in a very, very good mood in the evening of January 6th. She also is going to be able to fill in gaps around communication and how long it took to actually get Trump to even film a message or release a message to tell people to go home. And we know what we ended up with, a message that he said he loved the insurrectionists, right? So she's going to be able to give that minute-by-minute playbook as well as Pottinger. And I think that's still going to tell a beautiful story. But the last point about the Secret Service is, remember, the Select Committee has been interviewing Secret Service agents for the past few months. And I feel like this is an opportunity where they could quickly go back to those individuals and have additional conversations to cross-check any previous testimony or ask new questions based on the fact that the Secret Service did delete this information, which Representative Stephanie Murphy was right to say this was too important to mismanage or mishandle or just to delete, especially in the days after a violent attack on our Capitol.
It is Wednesday, the 20th of July of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Yeah, this is the day that we usually make an allusion to the movie Beckett, about, will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? But we're not going to go there today, except to mention that, this crystal fascist takeover is not just, the meddlesome priests of the Opus Dei type. Oh, no. We got fundamentalism coming out our ears. Plus, just your regular run-of-the-mill grifting as well. Isn't it weird how grifting and fascism seem to go hand in hand? Yeah, well, they do it. And they seem to get away with it. I guess there's one of those secret OLC memos that you just have to let the fascists and Nazis take over. You just have to. Yeah. Now, it's not a law. It's just a policy. Just so you know. Okay? In a memo. Okay. Well, Bannon is back at his trial. And before we put ourselves in the bubble, I noticed that opening statements by the prosecution was telling the judge about Bannon's post comments or post-hearing comments yesterday on the courthouse steps about being politically persecuted. And I would just remind Bannon, no, you're not being persecuted, mofo. You're being prosecuted. Okay? Big difference. And, I mean, the law is clear. You either did it or you didn't do it. And Bannon didn't do it. What did he not do? Well, respond to a lawful subpoena. He hasn't turned over any records that he's supposed to turn over, and he says, I've been cooperating. Yeah, well, what he's hoping for is that as soon as Trump declares that he's running for office in 2 years, I mean, he'll be running really for office in 2 years. But he wants to declare it now so that, as in Bannon's case, Bannon thinks that, okay, then the trial's over. You can't do anything because this guy's running for office. See how we like to use your rules against you? Okay, well, I suppose we should try to use our rules against them. Wouldn't you think? Yeah, I know that the rule of law in our court system has been undermined after decades of court packing by a very right-wing, shall we say, Nazi-adjacent type think tanks, Federalist Society, Heritage Foundation, I'm looking at you. And, Alec, it's a chop shop. You just chop up things, put them back together, and sell it on the open market. Here, a template for your legislation. This is what we want you to say. Fill in the blanks with just your name. Good to go. And that's how they did it. A little template for people who don't really know how to do anything. And we just let them do it because they were, they're following the rules. Were they? I don't know. Well, I'm livid about that. I'm livid about the fact that almost, a little more than 24 women got arrested yesterday. One guy. Let's not forget about that one guy, okay? So that makes it okay for all the rest of the guys there who were probably at the softball game instead. They did have the House and Senate softball game going on. The guys went there. The gals went and, protested in front of the Supreme Court for women's rights. And, of course, they were arrested for it. Because it's much easier to arrest a bunch of women protesting their rights being taken away than it is for, thousands of armed insurgents storming the Capitol because they lost an election and they didn't like that. So, you can't blame the Capitol cops, and I'm not going to blame the Capitol cops like, well, why didn't you arrest anybody on January 6th? Well, they had their hands full, and they arrested who they could, and they decided, well, we're going to have to go to the video record, and we'll arrest them that way, which makes it so onerous about what the Secret Service has done, isn't it? Who knew that Rosemary Woods was still working? She's like there deleting stuff for the Secret Service now. Yeah, I can't wait to see the picture about the contortion. Oh, yeah, well, I had my foot over here on the pedal, and I reached over here to answer the phone. Next thing I know, 18 minutes gone. Yeah, this time it's like 2 days. 2 days. Well, that's how it works, If you let them get away with it, they think that they're going to get away with it every time. And if they don't get away with it, they're going to make your lives miserable. Horses' heads decapitated at the foot of your bed to, like an offer. Just an offer. Okay. You have a choice. It's just an offer. Boy. So I guess we do have a freedom to choose, don't we? Yeah. All right. Either going on or it's final. Thanks. What a choice. One guy got arrested in the protest for women's rights. Only one guy. Everybody else had to play softball. And if that's not a metaphor for where we are and exactly how the Nazis were able to take over in a very similar way, then we don't know our history, don't we? And we don't. It doesn't repeat, it resonates. That's what I keep saying. And boy, is it resonating. Kind of like a goose step drum beat to me. I don't know what it is to you. I know. I'm not. When I say you, I mean the amorphous you out there, not our friends. I don't mean you guys. So, shall we get out of my livid rant and attend to the curated part of the show? Yes, we shall. And what do we have in store for you today? Well, actually quite a bit, so we might as well. We had a fairly long opening clip about the Secret Service, and why not just call them the SS? I mean, if they're in service to protecting a fascist takeover, let's do it. All right? The SS. Much easier to say, and it says a lot more about what they are now, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Okay, on the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe as we begin this fabulous Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, which is really just a lovely velvety egg dish with a really creamy hollandaise sauces. Anyway, at least a dozen GOP electors who falsely certified Trump as the victor of the 2020 election in Georgia are now subjects of a criminal investigation. Just find me 11,000. One more vote than what I needed because I'm a mobster. What an idiot. God, I hate that guy. We all do. The unprofessional response to the mass shooting in Uvalde has intensified doubts over whether tiny police agencies make sense. And election security experts have urged state and county directors to be prepared for possibly years of supply chain issues affecting paper, computer hardware, and other items. Yeah, probably those I voted stickers. We're going to have problems supplying those, apparently. Damn them. How convenient, huh? Yeah. After the break, we move to the chef's table where a top administrative court in Turkey ruled the Erdogan's decision to pull the country out of a key European treaty protecting women from violence was lawful. Well, since it was lawful, let's just not protect women from violence. It's I don't know, they have a lot of history about that, don't they? And the FBI has disrupted a group of state-sponsored North Korean hackers that targeted hospitals. And I just got a letter in the mail yesterday about that and my elderly mom. Thank you, North Korea. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and go ahead, chat. It's monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of the chat room link across the page near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon site. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it would really help. So please do. we need the help to pay our bills and continue this powerhouse of resistance against dark forces arrayed against not only representative democracy in the United States of America, but around the world. They're after us, and we shall not let them take it away. We shan't. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I incidentally post the show notes and links diary 10 minutes before showtime, and that's where the real reportage can be found. So follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and you can pretty much find those show notes and links. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. And as long as they haven't burned down the library at Alexandria so far, you can find the deep archive of the Netroots Radio Library for the last 11 years. Yes, that's how long we've been doing it. And that's pretty old in internet years, from what I hear. Anyway, the Library of Netroots Radio for the last 11 years can be found at the Internet Archive at archive.org. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Save some room because we still have the chef's table to attend to. But here in the Bistro Cafe, this first offering is out of the Washington Post by Matthew Brown. Georgia prosecutors investigating potential criminal influence in the 2020 presidential election by Trump and his allies have notified several Republicans who were part of a fake elector scheme that they are targets of the probe and could face charges, according to a document filed yesterday, Tuesday. The information in the filing provides the latest insight into the fast-moving and expanding investigation. This led by Fulton County District Attorney Fannie T. Willis, who requested the convening of a special grand jury earlier this year. Part of the investigation now centers on the 16 Republicans who gathered at the Georgia Capitol on December 14th of 2020 as part of an attempt to falsely certify the state's electoral college votes for former President Donald Trump, even though Joe Biden won the state. Lawyers for 11 of those 16 Republicans said in a new court filing that their clients received grand jury subpoenas on June 1st, then were notified in late June that they were considered targets of the investigation instead of witnesses. They argue in the filing that the subpoenas are unreasonable and oppressive, and the electors will invoke the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination after advice from legal counsel. Why, of course. They deemed the new designation a publicity stunt. Wow, all the fascists use the same playbook, don't they? Thompson of the Washington Post brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. The criticism heaped on a 6-member school police force in Uvalde, Texas, after its response to a mass shooter this spring has drawn attentions to a ubiquitous American institution, the tiny police department. While supporters of such agencies say they provide a personal touch that bigger police departments cannot match, critics say they often lack the training, expertise, and accountability expected in today's world of heavily armed criminals and heightened scrutiny of officers. Now, I won't go into the particulars of the unprofessional response of the Uvalde 6-member police force there. But larger agencies are also being strongly criticized. Police departments with fewer than 10 officers have also made headlines in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and elsewhere in recent years for hiring and misconduct issues. As the nation wrestles with what policing should look like in the 21st century, many question whether the smallest of police departments, which function in nearly every state, employ more than 20,000 officers nationwide, and provide the first line of defense for millions of Americans, can adequately carry out their mission. Officials in some states have pushed to consolidate the smaller departments into larger neighboring agencies, often triggering opposition. The only reason they exist is because of politics, and they provide jobs for some individuals, said Charles A. McClellan, Jr., who led the Houston Police Department from 2010 to 2016. Uvalde is a perfect example of what's wrong with the disjointed law enforcement jurisdictions we have in this country. Even though it happened in Texas, it can happen anywhere. Scott Bauer of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Election officials from across the country meeting under heightened security were urged yesterday, Tuesday, to prepare for supply chain issues that could lead to shortages in paper used for everything from ballots to I voted stickers for years to come. The summer meeting of the National Association of State Election Directors brought together nearly 200 people, including election directors from 33 states, experts in election security, interest groups that work with elections, vendors, and others. Election security experts told the directors to be prepared for possibly years of supply chain issues affecting paper, computer hardware, and other things. The supply chain, as it affects elections, may not return to normal until 2026, said Ed Smith, a longtime election technology and administration veteran who chairs a federal government industry coordinating council that works on election security issues. The lead time to obtain election hardware is 2 to 3 times longer than the norm, a delay not seen since 1999 or 2000, Smith said. Wow, I wonder what happened then. Costs are also higher, and elections officials should be prepared for spotty and unpredictable problems due to transportation and pandemic-related shutdowns, he said. Not to mention armed vigilantes with maggot hats on wanting to observe your vote. Let's not forget that. Okay, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, The Gods of Thunder. Warning, small spoiler for 14 seconds. Once again, we get to see writer-director Taika Waititi play with the Marvel Cinematic Universe's toys in Thor Love and Thunder, the thematic sequel to his Thor Ragnarok. And as with many sequels, it's a lot of the same, but significantly different. Where Thor Ragnarok was an action comedy with a healthy sideline of adventure drama, Love and Thunder is an action comedy with a healthy dose of romance melodrama, which, not that you asked or cared, I'm fine with, because I love me a good romance, and I love me some Natalie Portman as Jane Foster. Excuse me, Dr. Jane Foster. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jason Aaron, for writing the comic series that allowed the MCU to say to Portman, Nat, we know you weren't happy with how you were being girlfriended and damsel in distress in the first couple movies. We get it. So you probably aren't reading the comics, but there's been this whole thing. And, well, how'd you like to be Thor? Love and Thunder is balanced more towards the comedy than Ragnarok was. In that way, you should know this is not a movie meant to be deeply probed. For instance, there's this whole submotif about protecting children. Christian Bale plays this father whose daughter dies in the face of his uncaring god, turning the father into a god killer. Later on, he steals Asgardian children to bait Thor. Chris Hemsworth Thor, not Natalie Portman Thor, although he gets her as well, along with Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie and Waititi's Korg. It's a greatest hits collection. Here's the spoiler. So at first I thought, he's going to kill those hostages. But he didn't, and for once, that makes sense, because his whole thing should be about protecting kids, right? Yet, later on, both sides put them in danger, as the movie opts for having a really fun kid battle over thematic consistency. That's the type of movie Thor Love and Thunder is. Giants straight from the memes, screaming goats, Russell Crowe's mighty Zeus with his wonderfully ridiculous Greek accent. For better or for worse, it almost always chooses accessibility and fun over anything else. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The discovery of penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine a world before the development of what many consider to be miracle drugs. However, just 90 years ago, antibiotics weren't available. Thanks to antibiotics, some common illnesses such as strep throat are now easily treated, whereas in the past they often led to serious complications. Antibiotics serve an important role in keeping you and your loved ones healthy, but it's important to remember that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections. Most common infections such as colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, and many sinus and ear infections are caused by viruses and do not respond to antibiotic treatment. These infections can be overcome by simply treating the symptoms and letting the illness run its course. Unfortunately, antibiotics have often been overused, resulting in decreased effectiveness and an increase in antibiotic-resistant diseases. Antibiotic resistance, or the increased ability of bacteria to survive in the presence of antibiotics, has become a major public health threat that we all need to help fight. When a person takes antibiotics, they are at risk for possibly having a bad reaction to these drugs. Some side effects can be quite serious, or even life-threatening in the case of an allergic reaction or severe diarrhea. This is why it is very important to only use antibiotics when they are absolutely needed, and not for viral infections. Talk to your healthcare professional about the best treatment for your illness. If it is caused by a virus, follow his or her recommendation for treating the symptoms. Learn more about appropriate antibiotic use and how to feel better when you don't need an antibiotic by visiting CDC's Get Smart, Know When Antibiotics Work website at cdc.gov/getsmart/community.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Good eating habits developed in childhood can last a lifetime, but getting children to eat their fruits and vegetables is a common problem. Eating them adds important nutrients, helps control weight, and reduces the risks for many serious illnesses. Children in the U.S. are eating more fruit. However, 60% of children get fewer fruits than recommended, and 93% don't get enough vegetables. Childcare, schools, and school districts can help change this by meeting or exceeding federal nutrition standards for meals and snacks, including fruits and vegetables wherever food is offered, and helping children learn about and taste fruits and vegetables. At home, parents can eat a variety of fruits and vegetables with their children and provide them as snacks, even if it takes many tries. Also, parents can include their children when shopping for, growing, and preparing fruits and vegetables. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Come to the forest. It's a place not so far away. A place where you don't have to mow the lawn or babysit. A place where you don't have to make time for free time. Where you can cool down in one of nature's swimming pools. Come meet bugs and birds. You may even meet the mysterious creature known as the other you. The silly you. The adventurous you. The curious you. Ask your parents to take you to this not-so-far-away place. Come to the forest, where the other you lives. But first, stop by discovertheforest.org, a public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Pools, water parks, and other recreational water venues are popular places to relax and stay cool, but they can be sources of serious illness. Since 2000, nearly 500 outbreaks have been reported at recreational water venues in the U.S., resulting in over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Most were caused by parasites, bacteria, viruses, or certain chemicals in the water. Parents with young children who have diarrhea should not allow their children to swim or play in the water. In addition, bathers should check the inspection scores of pools and water parks and can conduct mini-inspections using test strips before getting in the water. A few simple precautions can allow you to share the fun, not the germs. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Hey kids and parents, it's back to school time. As you shop for school supplies and get ready for class, make sure you have emergency plans in place. Did you know that emergency preparedness plays a major role in school life? Throughout the year, schools actively prepare for natural disasters, outbreaks, and other emergency situations. Students and parents need to be aware and learn what to do during an emergency. Every family should build an emergency kit, make a family disaster plan, and be informed about events that could affect their community. Parents, take a few extra steps to help children be prepared. Make sure they know the full name, address, and phone numbers of parents or guardians. In our high-tech world of cell phones, memorizing emergency phone numbers is very important. Include a copy of this information in their backpack. Other items to keep in their backpack include water and non-perishable snacks, a pocket-sized first aid kit, a whistle to alert others for help, and a list of allergies, medical conditions, and medications. Make sure their school and teacher have a copy, too. Be familiar with different routes and ways to travel home, like walking, taking the bus, or riding home with another student who lives nearby. Establish a secret code word with your child and whoever takes them home from school to protect against an unauthorized person picking them up. This list is a great starting point to prepare your student for the upcoming school year. Customize these steps to fit your child's capabilities and needs. Ask school administrators and teachers about emergency preparedness plans so you know what steps they are taking to keep your child safe. Many schools have guidelines on how to shelter in place during natural disasters, how to secure classrooms during an emergency lockdown, and how to teach preparedness curriculum to students. Remember, emergency preparedness is important for everyone. Children who are prepared are more confident during stressful emergency situations. By following preparedness guidelines, parents, children, and school staff can improve their safety and peace of mind. For more information on school emergency preparedness, visit cdc.gov/children/schools. To learn more about disasters and emergency preparedness, follow @CDC Emergency on Twitter or visit emergency.cdc.gov. So, let's get prepared. Have a great school year.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Which branch of the federal government has the most power? The concept of balance of powers refers to the relative extent of powers distributed by the Constitution among the three major institutions of the national government of the United States. These institutions are Congress, the presidency, and the system of federal courts headed by the Supreme Court, also known as the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. The framers of the Constitution intended Congress to be the predominant branch of government. In fact, the very first article of the Constitution deals with the powers and limitations on Congress. Article 2 deals with the executive branch, and Article 3, the judicial branch. When the framers designed the new government in 1787 and established it in 1789, they gave Congress more power than the presidency and the Supreme Court. This balance has changed over the years. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Recently, a 10-year-old girl was raped and became pregnant, but couldn't access abortion care in her home state of Ohio. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The facts were first published in the venerable Indiana newspaper, the Indianapolis Star, as part of an article about abortion restrictions after the Supreme Court's abolition of that constitutional right. In Indianapolis, Indiana, a local OBGYN, Dr. Caitlin Bernard, had treated a 10-year-old rape victim from Ohio because Ohio prohibits all abortions after 6 weeks. The girl may have been a day or two late in seeking that medical care, and the law in Ohio makes no exception for rape or incest. Conservative outlets, politicians, and anti-abortion advocates who celebrate laws like Ohio's first indicated that the story in all likelihood was simply invented, a fabrication, fake news. But then the Columbus Dispatch reported that a 27-year-old man had been charged with and confessed to the crime of rape of a child under the age of 13, and that law enforcement in court confirmed that his victim had had an abortion in Indianapolis. There sadly will be many more stories like this one, where child victims of rape will be re-victimized by laws that make abortion illegal or inaccessible. About half the states now, or soon, will ban all or almost all abortions. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1899. That was the day New York City newsboys went on strike. A newspaper article noted, "The Newsboys Union has decided to tie up the World and the Journal."
They have struck for better rates on the evening editions of these papers, and their demands have been refused. Therefore, beginning with the first appearance of the red-headed extras this noon, the boys are going to refuse to sell. Envoys have been going up and down the line passing the word. Ye don't sell no more World or Journal, or you get your face punched in, see? The main issue of the strike was that the papers had sold for more money during the Spanish-American War, as people were clamoring for news of the conflict. But as the war ended, the boom dried up. The newsboys had paid more for the papers, but could not make the money back from their readers. The article quoted one of the striking newsboys saying, "They put the prices to 6 papes for a dime when the war began. Den, when the war quit, and there wasn't no such sale for the papes, and we wanted to get 'em 2 for a cent again, but they wouldn't. That's what we're going on strike for now. The cops is all busy, and we can do any scab newsboys that show his face without police interference. We're here for our rights, and we will die defending them. At the rates they give us now, we can't make on ye 4 cents on 10 papes." The Pulitzer-owned World and the Hearst-owned Journal did not reduce prices after the war. But in the end, the newspaper's management did agree to buy back any unsold copies. And thus the strike ended on August 2nd, marking a small step forward.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at laborhistoryin2.
You for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high nearly the same as yesterday. Weather Underground, which the station this is drawing from, is a bit higher in elevation than where the mothership resides here in Rogue River. Well, that forecast says about 101, while we registered 106 yesterday at the mothership, and so we expect it to be about that high today. So we will keep the cool in, hopefully keep the hot out. Sunny skies throughout the day with winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the upper 50s, winds continuing out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then a mainly sunny sky tomorrow with highs dropping to around 95. And the winds will be out of the west-northwest but picking up to 10 to 15 miles per hour. Grass pollen is rated very high here in the Rogue River proper, and I can attest to that. Oh my gosh. The air quality index is good at 36 parts per million, which is about what it was yesterday. Oh, and that daytime UV index, though very high, has come down 1 notch to level 8. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.06 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 75%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 80 degrees and mostly cloudy, and they are continuing a heat advisory there, which has been deadly, as you know, in Europe. Paris has come down in their temperature, 71 degrees with rain, but now they have a flood advisory. Rome is 94 and fair with a heat advisory. Kyiv is 75 and partly cloudy. Kabul is 80 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 85 and fair. Tokyo is 82 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 53 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 51 and cloudy with a fog advisory, heavy fog advisory, by the way, on the bay. And New York, New York is 90 degrees Fahrenheit, fair, but with a heat advisory. Take care if you can. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. At the Associated Press bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A top administrative court in Turkey ruled yesterday, Tuesday, that Erdogan's decision to pull the country out of a key European treaty protecting women from violence was lawful, rejecting petitions seeking its cancellation. Erdogan withdrew Turkey from the Council of Europe's Istanbul Convention last year, prompting condemnation from women's rights groups and Western countries. The landmark convention was signed in Istanbul in 2011. Several women's groups and other organizations had petitioned the Council of State, arguing that Erdogan's move to pull out of the treaty through a presidential decree was unlawful. The court's judges, however, ruled by a majority decision to reject the petitions. Yilmaz Tunç, a member of Erdogan's ruling party, welcomed the court's decision, saying it would put an end to discussions that lack a legal basis. The main opposition party leader, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, vowed to return Turkey to the convention within a week or even 24 hours should his center-left party come to power in an election next year. Last year's decision came after some officials from Erdogan's Islam-oriented party had advocated for a review of the agreement, arguing it was inconsistent with Turkey's conservative values by encouraging divorce and undermining the traditional family unit. Critics also claimed that it promoted homosexuality. Erdogan insisted it would not be a step backward for women, and in March, Turkey's parliament ratified a bill aimed at combating violence against women that included introducing tougher sentences if the victim of a violent crime is a woman, and making persistent stalking punishable by prison. At least 226 women have been murdered in Turkey so far in 2022, while 425 were murdered last year.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Eric Tucker of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The FBI and Justice Department recently disrupted the activities of a hacking group that was sponsored by the North Korean government and that targeted U.S. hospitals with ransomware, ultimately recovering $500,000 in ransom payments and cryptocurrency. And that was according to Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco. Monaco revealed new details of the attacks during a speech in which she encouraged organizations hit by ransomware to report the crime to law enforcement, both so that officials can investigate and also so they can help victim companies try to get ransom payments back. If you report that attack, if you report the ransom demand and payment, if you work with the FBI, we can take action, Monaco said. We can follow the money and get it back. We can help prevent the next attack, the next victim, and we can hold cyber criminals accountable. Well, let's do it. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.